I am super excited. Today we have Richard Fried, actually Dr. Richard Fried. He's an author, he's a clinician, he actually does research on how gaming and screens can be addictive. So if your family struggles with any of this, you gotta stay and listen to the entire interview. This man is amazing. And I'm gonna read his bio right now and you'll see exactly why he is amazing. Dr. Richard Fried, PhD, is a psychologist, author, and his insights have been featured in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and other media outlets. He is a leading expert on how our kids' increasingly screen-focused lives affect their physical and mental health, as well as academic success. Dr. Fried has dedicated his professional life to unmasking how Silicon Valley has joined forces with leading psychological experts to create the secret science of persuasive design that is stealing a generation of youth away from the real world to live on social media, video games, and online videos. He is determined to bring this knowledge, which now exists among a handful of tech elite, to all of those who care for kids. Dr. Fried speaks nationally to groups of parents, teachers, and healthcare providers, receiving his professional training at Cambridge Hospital, Harvard Medical School, and the California School of Professional Psychology. He is on the advisory boards of the Screen Time Action Network at Fair Play, Families Managing Media, and Wait Until 8th. And Families Managing Media is now called Screen Strong. Dr. Fried lives in Walnut Creek, California, and is the proud father of 2 daughters. Let's meet Dr. Fried. Richard, it's great to see you.
Dr. Doan, Andy, it's an honor for me to be here. You've started this, or you've been here since the beginning. You saw this before everyone else did. You wrote Hooked on Games. You called it an addiction before. I think the World Health Organization called it an addiction. So it's an honor for me to be with you today.
Actually, it's an honor because you validated what I thought was going to happen 15 years ago. So you're right. I wrote Hooked on Games and I went to the literature, and at that time, in about 2010, when I started research for my book, there were only like maybe 6 research papers on gaming addiction. It blew my mind because as a PhD trained scientist as well as a clinician, I'm like, that's significant. There's 6 papers that went through something or got proved on a concept that has not been described in textbooks, which is a huge thing to do. Today, if you go to PubMed or the National Library of Medicine and search like video game addiction, you will see thousands of papers. So to have you here with all your research, because you're such a good clinician, good writer, you have such a huge knowledge that the world needs to hear. You actually validate me and what I said rather than being crazy Andy Doan was saying that the sky was falling, and I got so much hate mail for this stuff. So I'm so glad you're here. Thank you.
No, thank you.
And you're not alone. So there is a famous author who wrote The Anxious Generation, Jonathan Haidt, and he has done research and says that mental health hasn't changed that much. Genetics has not changed that much. The thing that's changed are the screens. And that is now ruining our kids, causing great anxiety, great mental health. And without a doubt, he blames it on mobile phones and screens. And so what do you have to say to that? What do you say when Silicon Valley, Silicon Valley parents and families restrict screen time, but release it to the rest of the world? What have you found to be the case?
I owe a debt of gratitude to Jonathan Haidt and his work. He has brought together a nation and brought the science forward and brought families together in a way that really hasn't been done. And he's started to really energize this movement. It's been around, but he's really helped families come together. What I do in my book, Better Than Real Life, my new book, is I describe how Silicon Valley had invented these technologies, these consumer technologies, and they wanted to figure out a way to increase time on device. That is all Silicon Valley wants from your kid, time on device. And unfortunately, time on device means time away from the real world. So we want to steal childhood away from the real world and put it on a screen where every little movement is tracked and followed, and AI is turned loose on that. And so Silicon Valley comes together with the highest levels of psychology and neuroscience and creates this science called persuasive design. I want to make persuasive design a household word. It is known to a handful of tech elite who are taking profound actions to protect their kids. I want to bring this knowledge forward to all parents, educators, and healthcare providers.
And how is persuasive design different than just simple advertising to kids? Why is that so bad?
Right. All screens are not the same. When your kids watch a movie, when your kids watch a TV show, okay, it's entertaining. It is not a consumer technology where there is a bevy, a room full of neuroscientists and a giant supercomputer that is using. This is different. It is creating a technologies that are experimentally and scientifically designed to change your child. This isn't about entertainment. This is about a scientific experiment on kids to pull them away from the real world, to put them on a screen. And the way that's done is that this really esoteric, complicated, profoundly difficult science to get your hands around. I could not, as a PhD, I could not walk into social media and say, I want to be a persuasive designer. No, you need expert training on this. So, but the essence of that, after staring at it for a long time, it just really came to me to understand what these technologies are doing is designing consumer technologies that young people and adults, but especially young people, experience as better than real life. Hence the title of my book. It's not just, oh, this is more entertaining than real life. It is about this science is able to target your kids' genes, their soul, their DNA, to say, this is what I need to be doing in my life to be successful on Earth, to be social, to attain goals, to procreate. Like, this is what I need to do to be a human. And it's staring right here at a screen. So when parents try to pull their kid away from a video game, why did my kid put their fist to a wall? Why did they push me when I try to pull my daughter away from social media? Why did she go in a room and or limit her phone? Why did she cut on herself? Why did she say she was suicidal? Why did she end up in a psychiatric hospital? Persuasive design is why. It is the why that is behind the kids' screens.
So let's just call it for what it is too. So persuasive design is the technology, the methodology, which creates human addictive behaviors. So why do these companies want our kids to be addicted to screens?
You will see it at Instagram. You'll see it at YouTube. You'll see it at a video game company. What we want is time on device. The more we can get your kid to sit here and stare, because so many of the people that we've depended upon have really had a dereliction of duty and sold out childhood. They've enabled Silicon Valley to take childhood and to move it away from running around outside to spending time with family, to engaging with school, and move it on a screen. And that's why they've done it. And we definitely know with respect to video games, they can be addictive. I've seen your work. I think someday we're just going to wake up to realize that we should also be calling social media addictive as well. It's a matter of time.
Yeah, I saw that too, because during the pandemic, I played a lot of Fortnite, which I shouldn't have had, because if you read my book, you realize I was a gaming addict too, and I played like 100 hours a week for over 10 years, and that was just crazy. But that's another sidetrack, rabbit hole. But the reason why they want eyes on the screen, and you mentioned that, that's the objective of Instagram, of Facebook, of any social media, of any platform today. Because during the pandemic, I was playing Fortnite, and not to say anything about Epic Games or Fortnite, but these kids, instead of going to school, were playing Fortnite. And I saw an element of persuasive design. And I'm not knowing if, I didn't do research on this, so I know your book did. The next question is going to deal with Epic Games and what they did. But why did they do it for Fortnite? Fortnite is a free game. that makes billion with a B dollars per year on a free game. And they've done that for almost like 10 years. So one of the elements of the game is that they know that kids, and I got this from your book, and I'm going to steal your thunder, so I'm going to let you describe what you found. But what I found was that if the kids don't have skins, so skins are like costumes. They're virtual costumes that kids and adults pay like $10 to $20 plus to achieve or to obtain these skins so they can dress like Batman or Superman or Star Wars or whoever their famous, or popular figure at the time, even famous singers. They have their own skins and they pay a royalty, the rock stars, but the game has these skins. So when a kid who's like, I've seen it before time and time again, who doesn't have the money for the skins, they get into a chat or a lobby, gaming lobby, where we're deciding teams and who's going to play. And it's only a team of 4 max. I hear kids say, boot the default, because they're dressed in this drab, grayish, brownish clothing. And so they get booted. Because they get booted, they go to mom and dad and cry, and they actually go to Dr. Mudfud, which is my alias, and they knew I was a doctor, and they beg and beg and beg for V-Bucks to buy the skins. That is what we're talking about. Peer pressure online drives a $5 to $6 billion market because a 12-year-old kid got bullied out of the lobby and has to go beg his grandparents for $50 of V-Bucks for his birthday, Christmas, and whatever to keep up with the Joneses online.
Yeah, my practice is actually filled with kids whose parents are in the shower and they steal their credit card. I have colleagues whose kids have stolen their mom's credit card and spent $1,500 on V-Bucks. And Fortnite takes formerly honest, well-behaved kids and turns them, it puts them in this really toxic environment of Fortnite knows the more you play, the more you pay. So we can do everything we can to use persuasive design to hook kids and put them on this game. And we're going to go at their genetic core to do that. And once they do that, then they're going to get hit with it. As you say, it's an environment that pushes you purposely, I believe, set up to make you spend money.
And they sucked it out of me. I'm a doctor with a frontal lobe, right? So I'm like playing, and I put into the season pass because I'm very frugal, and the season pass gives me some skins, but the skins aren't the cool skins that you have to pay like, $20, $25 for. So I end up buying other skins along the way during that battle pass. And then on top of that, you have these kids who are begging me to do that, and I feel guilty, so I start buying passes and buying skins for kids that I played with. And then after that, I'm like, no, time out. I'm just doing the math. There's no way I could continue this path of spending money. So if it can work on an adult like me, who's 54 this month, it's going to work on your 12-year-old kid or a teenage kid that doesn't have a frontal lobe yet. So what did you find in your book about how Epic Games use psychologists to basically do this or achieve this persuasive design?
What's really hard for me is when I see parents in my practice hear that their kid, it's called a game, but it's not. It is a Skinner. Fortnite and other video games like it are a Skinner box, a psychological conditioning chamber. And Fortnite is designed, their head of UX at Epic Games, and Fortnite is Dr. Celia Hodat, who has a PhD in psychology, neuroscience, child development. And I believe she built that game to suck boys' lives away. She's left Epic Games, but her work remains. And you'll see her. She's one of the few that's talked about, I'm going to use brain science to develop this game. Like, parents say, my kid's going to play Fortnite. No, they are being entered into a brain experiment where the key elements of persuasive design, which is when we were hunters and gatherers, if you could get easy rewards, that's what the Stone Age brain that have in our heads. We're trying to make it through this modern day society, but we have this Stone Age brain. If you could get easy rewards as a Stone Age person, you were a winner. If you could run 3 antelope off a cliff rather than chase one down all day and break an ankle, your tribe was going to survive, your genes were going to survive. So easy rewards are it. So Fortnite talks about we're going to provide rewards on this fixed interval basis, I believe, which is psychological terminology. They talk about, and we're going to make them essentially brain dead easy, which is we're going to have you. The rewards or the challenges that people find are by design on Fortnite, which is completely different than the real world. When we send our kids to school, they're going to fail. When we send our kids outside to play a sport, they're going to fall down. In Fortnite, it is you essentially roll over in bed. If you're a kid at home, you pull up your controller, you push a few buttons. These profoundly easy rewards of as hunter-gatherer boys, the two things that you needed to do to be genetically successful, to procreate, are to hunt, fight, and to build shelter. Well, what do you do? What are the two things that you do in Fortnite to gain status in your tribe? You hunt, fight,
and you gather.
Build shelter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it is going after why does my kid disappear from the challenges, the hard scrabble life of school? Why does my kid never want to spend time with family? My kid is believing that down deep in their genetics that this is what they need to do to be genetically successful, to procreate. And essentially what they end up doing is live in a back room with a whole bunch of other kids. And they're going to oftentimes grow up to fail to launch. And they're going to be a part of a generation of boys that doesn't go to college. If you and I visited a college, there'd be nearly 60% women there, and it's supposedly on its way to 2-to-1. Like, if you want if your boy to go to college, I would go back to, we need to really think about what games they're playing and if they play when they start playing video games.
Yeah, that's a good point that you're making, is that, basically these psychological manipulations in persuasive design, it's literally tapping into the primordial basic drives of every single human being. So when you're saying, Dr. Freed, that it drives into the boys' need to procreate, not that they think they're going to hump the computer or, procreate with the technology, but they're driving the elements such as being a hunter to gather food, and then also a gatherer to build resources like houses, and that's what you do in these games, or Fortnite, for example, then basically that drives into that need to do that, right? Because those two skill sets actually attract a really nice mate or partner in real life. But here, they're just tapping it in and making them and tricking them and fooling them to basically doing it online instead. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's tragic. Starting in about third grade, the status that matters to our boys today is how much of a standout or good gamer that you are. So, and you're, if you think about the sort of the teen hunt that we used to send boys out, and they would essentially work together to bring home food for the family, and that would be rewarded. And literally the best person at that would be set up with the best mate, and the second best would be set up with the second best mate. So you are in your genes saying, like, even though you're in a back room, typically with a whole bunch of boys, maybe stuck in a basement, and you're going to be doing that when you're 23 or 24 years of age, deep down, and like you feel like, oh, I have this status amongst my tribe. This is going to help me. And then kids disappear from school. We have a generation of boys that's failing to launch. It is set up genetically to have boys fail.
So this is very disturbing, right? What you're describing. And it's also disturbing with the regards to the double standard that tech executives aren't, giving this to their kids. They're actually limiting screen time for their own children. What do you have to say about that?
As I talk about in Better Than Real Life, there is a duplicity, a hypocrisy, a double standard, as you say. You see what this group of the tech elite, who are at the very top of industry, who are at the very top of what I call the Silicon Valley propaganda machine, this PR arm that says we're going to help you, but they're actually industry PR. And the top of the health industry, they are all doing the same thing. They are doing every single thing they can to protect their kids from persuasive design and limit their kids' access. You will see this tech elite actually use my language, and they will say, these technologies are designed to steal my kids away from the real world, because that's my book subtitle. how Silicon Valley's secret science of persuasive design is stealing childhood. Like these very few tech elite understand that, and you will see them take profound actions. Meanwhile, of course, the tech industry markets this to your kid as just a game or social media. That's where your kid should be. This Silicon Valley propaganda machine, their job is to push this stuff on your kid. And the health industry, it's really tragic how they've sold out to Silicon Valley. All of them at the very top are protecting their own kids while they're pushing your kids in front of it. And then to see families in my practice get hurt by this, it makes me ill. Almost. It's just tragic.
I've talked a lot about boys. Let's talk about girls and social media. You say that the social platforms are exploiting their DNA-driven instincts. What do you mean by that psychologically and emotionally to our daughters when they go online?
Tim Kendall, who was a former Facebook exec, really said it well. Like the tobacco industry took this product and they added like sugar and menthol to jack up their product. And what the social media industry done is follow what I call making supernormal technology, which is coming off of Nicholas Tinbergen, a Dutch biologist, won the Nobel Prize for discovering supernormal stimuli. And these are things that are man-made, jacked up, artificial, that go after animal DNA. He had these songbirds that would ignore their real-world eggs to try to clamber up on top of these giant plastic day-glow eggs pointed with polka dots. But that went right at these songbirds' DNA soul and said, I need to be doing that. So they would ignore their real eggs, which is ignoring the real world, which is supernormal stimuli do. Think about how kids ignore the real world and develop an addictive or a compulsive response doing that thing. So the fast food industry has done that by creating products that go after our DNA for all of human history. If you could have as much fat, salt, and sugar as possible, you were a winner as a Stone Age person. Now, when we have a fridge 10 feet away, that puts us into big trouble. So we have these Stone Age brains that have an Achilles heel you can go after. So the social media industry created, they took this, girls have this genetic strength of social cognition and social understanding and being altruistic. They are amazing at that. But the social media industry is going to exploit that by turning the social media industry or the social media products, they're going to quantify it. They're going to quantify this social connection and social comparison, and they're going to gamify it. Never in the course of human history have like girls had to confront, how many likes and followers and have it be a contest of who you are and how good of a person you are by industry turning it into a quantified and gamified environment. Right at that center of their soul, that is not how we can't be treating preteen and teen girls like that. And the last thing I want to say is our girls are even biologically susceptible today, because in 1850, girls would have their first cycle start at age 16. That's dropped like a rock for reasons we don't completely understand. But now girls are having their cycle start at, let's say, 11, 10 sometimes. So that adolescence starts 2 years before you have your cycle. So in 1850, you had a girl until she was 14, 15 and had a developed brain, and your cycle or adolescence does two things. It gets you able to procreate, but it also orients you to people outside of your home so you can procreate with them. So today we have girls now at age 8 and 9 hitting adolescence, biologically being susceptible, being told in their brains that they are supposed to reorient themselves away from the family that loves them to people outside of the home. And social media industry is exploiting that, because preteens and teen girls should not be leaving their families behind, which should be number one in their lives, to go connect with a Lord of the Flies environment of peers and strangers who will somewhere between not parent them because they can't, or exploit them in a way that we don't want.
So all you mentioned is actually very disturbing. And you even mentioned that even the top health organizations are not truly protecting our kids. Can you explain how some of these institutions, in your words, aligned with the industry?
My book, Better Than Real Life, really does two things. It brings persuasive design, this hidden science forward, And then the second large thing I think it does, which is innovative, is it helps the public understand that the institutions which have defined our popular culture and tell you that we're going to protect our kids from unhealthy technology are actually aligned with industry or are typically funded by industry. And this is going to be difficult for some parents to hear. But as I said, the top, I call it the Silicon Valley propaganda machine. This group that essentially is like a tobacco industry body. The tobacco industry in the 50s invented the Tobacco Industry Research Committee. We're going to protect you. And instead what they did is they blocked real science. They displaced real science. And that's what the Silicon Valley propaganda machine does. And it's going to be hard for some parents to hear this, although a lot of parents are waking up when I go around and I talk at schools and talk with people like you. People are waking up to realize that kids are being sold out by groups like Common Sense Media, the organization which says we are going to protect your kid. Common Sense Media, maybe years ago, had a more science-based underpinning. They were kind of a rating organization, and you could go there and you could find the content of what your kids might play. They still have that, but Common Sense Media has changed. They're not monolithic. They have a few elements that are positive, but there is no organization in the United States or maybe the world that has done more to take childhood away from the real world and put it on a screen than Common Sense Media. And to be industry funded, and they profit by putting kids before screens. Why do I say that? They are funded by they've been funded by millions of dollars from Mark Zuckerberg. And what do you know? Common Sense Media works against science by pushing social media on kids. Meanwhile, you see the CEO, Jim Steyer, say, oh, it's really bad. I'm going to protect my kids from it. Again, that duplicity. It's tragic. It's messed up. When kids go to school, they are unethically given the Common Sense Media digital citizenship program for free because schools take it for free. It is Common Sense Media is actually also a giant ed tech screen school funded program. Like they'll take money from educational technology and they will be and they turn around and what do they do at school? When your kids are away from you and kids go to school and experience the Common Sense Media digital citizenship program that's supposed to help kids safely navigate technology, they are being pushed on the benefits of social media at school. That is tragic. That should not be happening. Schools actually have a giant conflict of interest in providing that for parents. What we need to do, what parents need to understand is a lot of organizations are industry funded, and there's science-based organizations emerging. Fair Play's Screen Time Action Network. I'm on the advisory board. Same with Screen Strong. There's phone-free schools. There's smartphone-free childhood. Started in the UK. Jonathan Haidt's on there with Hugh Grant. It's a lovely video, and now there's a USA version of that. Like your book, Hooked on Games. Like this is science. There is real science to be had out there. Let's go get that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I just want for our viewers to realize, how big this industry is. So just the gaming industry alone, we're not talking about social media and other types of media, just the gaming, video games. They make so much money. I think they're close to almost 100 billion a year or something like that industry or more. But if you take them, it's been years since I looked at the exact number, so I don't want to give you exact number, but you can look it up. Just Google how big is the video game industry. What's fascinating is that if you take the video game industry profits or just the revenues, how big it is, they are bigger than the music industry. They are bigger than the movie industry. They are bigger than the books industry. And they are bigger than all of the professional sports industry together, combined. So therefore, the video game industry and the media companies, and actually if you look at social media profits, they are amazing. They are just killing it, okay? So basically, these industries will invest into researchers, as Dr. Fried says, to block real science. And let me share with you one thing. And I don't know if this one researcher is involved with the gaming industry or not, but some of these researchers, you read in the literature, you'll see that they are pro-gaming. And you go to these psychological, like APA meetings, you're like, man, they sound like just in with the gaming companies, because it's like nothing stinks about the games. And I've met several of them, and they did not believe that addiction was possible. And actually, until they heard my story, and they're just dumbfounded and they walk away, right? But what's interesting is that there are researchers that done research, and I believe in what Dr. Gentile and others have done. Okay, there's very good researchers in the field, and they showed that the addiction rate in kids is about 8.5%, all the way up to like 20 plus. I believe it's somewhere around 10 to 15, because that's the addiction rate. Addiction rates in normal addiction rates around 10% for anything like alcohol. 10% of alcohol drinkers will be alcoholics, right? 10% of pot users will be serious drug addicts. That's just a standard number. But in the gaming industry, on the American Psychiatric Association website, they cite a research paper. You go there and look at it yourself. 1%. That only 1% of gamers are addicted to gaming. They will fool you, because that paper that the APA cites is a paper that does 18,000 subjects. And you're like thinking, wow, that's a huge friggin' number. But if you read the methodology, how do they recruit them? On the internet, through Google surveys. I can guarantee you, as a gamer, I was never on Google or Google surveys. As a gamer, I was busy playing Fortnite and trying to catch up my sleep and playing Fortnite again, or World of Warcraft, or basically, StarCraft or Warcraft or Civilization. That is basically pooling a bunch of healthy people and saying, what is the addiction rate in that healthy population? 1%. I agree. Let's pool the entire population, and that's where you get the true addiction rate. You got to grab the 30-year-old guy who's in the basement of his parents' house and get that survey. That's how you do the research. So I just want to give that example to give validation of what Dr. Fried is saying. He is absolutely right. There are researchers who are probably hired, or I don't want to say anything to get myself in trouble, but there are researchers who are very pro gaming, and they are pushing out research to confuse, or is very confusing for the rest of the field. Have you seen that
agreed.
Too?
Yes, I'll speak specifically more to the social media side. One of the so I talk about how there's this Silicon Valley propaganda machine. I also talk about how the leading child health organizations in the United States have sold out. The American Academy of Pediatrics. I work with pediatricians, good people. They are worried about kids' screen time. They are a science-based organization. The science-based side of the American Academy of Pediatrics will tell you screen time is it's a risk factor for child obesity. They will tell you the truth. But there is a small cadre of industry-aligned, rogue, gone off the deep end, social media like advocates like Dr. Moreno at the American Academy of Pediatrics, who have taken over the messaging. She's been funded by Facebook and Instagram. The American Academy of Pediatrics, you cannot do that. That's like having the dietary guidelines funded by a fast food maker. That's sickening. That's tragically unethical. And what do you know? She's a social media advocate. She personally has been, I believe, responsible for convincing a generation of parents that social media is safe. It's a good thing. She promotes it over and over and over and over, and ignores all this other research saying it poses risks. The American Academy of Pediatrics generally has turned its back on research from like Dr. Vivek Murthy who's our former Surgeon General, who says this stuff poses risk to kids. This stuff should have a warning label. Not the American Academy of Pediatrics, led by rogue Dr. Moreno. The American Academy of Pediatrics has a people look at them as the word and around the world. And here's Dr. Moreno also saying screen time's not that important, which is the exact opposite of the science-based folks at the American Academy of Pediatrics. You can't do that to people. If you are a pediatrician, if you are working with the American Academy of Pediatrics, understand, number one, they can't be trusted. Number two, complain. This is not fair. You cannot do this to kids. The American Academy of Pediatrics is better than that.
So I want to describe to people what we mean here. There's a virtual autism video that I have that says reduction in virtual autism. So this is a big deal. And I'm just so upset that pediatricians aren't leading the way, because there was a Instagram reel that was shared by my wife to me about how people were talking about virtual autism and that you do a screen detox and the kid gets better. Parents with autistic children jumping on that reel and saying how bogus it is, this detox is a scam. And I'm going to tell you, it's not a scam. I'm going to describe to you what's happening in an 18-month-old kid that if you give the iPad to, they will learn whatever on that iPad. Yes, there are good to that iPad. But you can go over on the goodness. So if you want your kid to only recognize certain colors, certain numbers, and certain behaviors, then give your kid that iPad for 10 hours a day, and that's all they're good at. They will look like they're autistic, actually. How do I know? I'm an ophthalmologist. So they bring the kid into me. I do an eye exam because they're worried about their kid's speech delay. They're worried about their kids babbling. They're worried about their kids not making eye contact. They're worried about their kids spinning, looking at, objects like fans all day long. I do an eye exam. It's normal. I take a complete history. I find out that they use the screen to babysit the child 6 to 10 hours a day. That was the cause of severe autism. I removed the screens away because I asked them, remove the screens away and see what happens. In 6 months, that severely autistic child becomes normal. There are thousands of cases like this around the world. And I'm so frustrated. You can tell that I'm frustrated that the AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics, says that screen time is not harmful. I'm telling you, if you're watching this video, screen time will severely cause brain damage in your kids. And if you don't intervene by a certain age, it is permanent. It is game over. They will be like that for the rest of their life. And watch my videos on virtual autism and you'll understand the mechanism and the science. And I even talk about all that. And how do I know? I'm a PhD in neuroscience. I'm so tired of parents too. That's why I'm doing this thing on video now. I go talk professionally. I've been paid thousands of dollars to fly all over the world to tell people this message. At the end, inevitably, there's always a few parents that don't want to believe what I say. And they look at me and say, you're just an ophthalmologist. And I tell them the science. You're just an ophthalmologist. Hey, wait, I'm a PhD in neuroscience too. And Dr. Freed, who has a PhD also in psychology, he says this, but you are just an ophthalmologist. That's why I'm going on YouTube, because I don't get that talk back anymore. And I get a one-way teaching with my best friends like Dr. Richard Freed, and we can sit here and tell you the truth. So if you care about your family, do it. If you don't, that is your problem. You will end up paying Dr. Freed more money to help your child later. There you go. That's my sale pitch for your practice.
Thank you. And what's really disturbing, they're essentially industry aligned and pushing your kid in front of a screen. It's tragic, taking childhood away from the real world activities that we know that actually science says that they need. Family number one, school number two, lots of physical activity to be physically and emotionally happy. Meanwhile, you see again the top people like Jim Steyer at the top of, go ahead and I talk about it in my book, Better Than Real Life, taking profound actions to protect his own kids from screens, taking profound actions to protect his kids from persuasively designed technology, social media, and video games. But his organization sends you the exact opposite message. You cannot do that.
Let's just be honest about this. It's about money. Right? So that's where the cigarette companies got in trouble. They started marketing to kids with the camel cartoon, figure, the camel, the cigarette, because these industries knew, the cigarette industry knew through research that basically you get someone addicted as a child, you got them for life. You got a lifelong smoker. So these industries, if they get them on, whatever, social media, on a game, on a platform, they are lifelong users. I'll give you an example. I'm 50-something years old now, but I use Facebook. And because I love Facebook, there's good things for Facebook. This will be promoted through Facebook. So I'm not against Facebook. I am for pro-ethical use of social media and pro-ethical use of gaming, right? Proper disclosures, proper education. Let's be honest with people about gaming. If let's get a warning label on a game. or social media or screens and say, hey, listen, if you overuse this in a kid or you cause overuse in a kid, you may have an autistic child. Put that warning label on there. So if that parent wants to do that to their children, then let them do it to their children, right? This is America. There's freedom. There's free choice. But my point on this is that the cigarette companies hooked them early so that they got lifelong users. That meant billions for cigarette companies. And that's where they got in trouble. They start marketing to kids. So we need to stand up and protect our kids. So how can parents protect their kids in this digital nicotine world, right? We have digital heroin. So Dr. Nick Cardaris, I just interviewed him, author of Glow Kids, amazing, clinician. He calls it digital heroin. So how do we protect our kids and families in this digital drugs era?
Personally, coming together in forums like yours, in science-based forums. If you're a community of parents, trust me, while the Common Sense Media and the American Academy of Pediatrics is trying to push you onto this, down deep in your soul, I think parents go, really? And then they're going to go talk to your neighbor. They're going to feel the same way. Come together in a community. If you have a faith-based community, come together. There is no better action than you can take to come together as a community and say, we're going to push back the age when kids get smartphones and social media and start to video game. We can't make kids do this together, as I talk about in the Wall Street Journal. Don't make kids be the only person. I'm old. I can stand up for myself. When I was younger, I struggled to do that. I couldn't do that. Like, schools need to take action. Communities need to take action to make sure they're the ones that are having all kids in their community essentially schools gotta go to your school. There's now a giant national movement to get smartphones out of school. They have no place in school. There's research to say it hurts your kids' academics. It exposes, it puts your kid at risk to be bullied. There have been kids that have been bullied and purposely, and everything's filmed and put on social media, and that kid will kill themselves later rather than have to go through the profound shame of having their entire community bully them and laugh at them. There's no way that smartphones should ever be involved anywhere, not just in the classroom, because that bullying happens out in the hall. That bullying happens in the hallways, that in little porticos and corticos and so forth. Like, it happens in the lunchroom. Get smartphones out of school. So what I want to talk about is come together as a community and come together and demand science. Seek out organizations like Fair Play, Screen Strong. Seek out and Better Than Real Life. I try to walk through the science of what's happening to kids. Use that. Go to your school and say, I want this Common Sense Media, which should not be at your kid's school because that's unethical, because they're actually profit by putting kids before screens. I don't want them teaching my kids to promoting social media at school. Get Common Sense Media's. I just spoke at a very big school district to the leaders there, and they were already on board. They wanted to get smartphones out of kids' classrooms, and they wanted to get rid of Common Sense Media's digital citizenship program there because they knew it was industry aligned and hurtful to kids. Let's take science-based action to help our kids.
Yeah, that's really good. And then you get criticism too, right? You got like parents that would say, hey, screens are the future. Kids need to adapt. What's your response to people who think you're just overprotective or technophobic?
I can understand parents have that because they have been inundated. That's an industry talking point. They don't know it, but you'll hear that from groups that are industry funded that claim that they're independent. Common Sense Media claims it's independent, which I believe is a lie. They can't say that. I believe it exposes them legally. Because you can't say you're independent and then say screen time is not such a problem. And meanwhile, the research clearly shows that screen time poses risk to kids' physical health. You can't do that. Look at not what these tech-aligned, tech-industry-funded organizations tell you to do. Look at what their leaders do. Don't take Common Sense Media and say like, oh, kids need to learn how to use, because that's their message. Kids need to learn how to use these devices. Look behind Common Sense Media. Look at what Jim Steyer, their CEO and founder, did for his kids. took dramatic action to protect his own. Don't fall for the lies and the duplicity of common sense media. Don't fall for that as a parent. Take your own science-based actions, and then just think about it. Look, the industry will say, don't believe your own eyes. Like, come on, parents and educators and healthcare providers. You watch kids disappear to a back room to live their lives on TikTok, Instagram, and video games. Really? They are learning about the digital age and how to be tech savvy by disappearing from life and becoming addicted or depressed and cut off from family? Like, no. By engaging in the real world, think about it. Bill Gates, Steve Jobs did not grow up with technology. They created the technology that we used by using self-control and their brains and their ability. They did not grow up with that stuff, and look what they were able to do.
You're absolutely right. So back in like 2011, there was a New York Times article about how all tech executives, or many tech executives in Silicon Valley, were sending their kids to a Waldorf school where they literally sign a contract, says they can't use tech, they can't use search engines, they can't use Google, they can't even use like computers. They had to handwrite their stuff. So they had to agree to that until age 16. So some parents were like, hey, our kids are gonna be behind. So Waldorf did a study, and they found that the kids that received the technology at 16 only took 6 months to catch up with their peers who had tech from a very, very, very early age. But they also had better brain development, right? They were more creative. They had more athletic skills, more music skills. They could write better because their brain was able to practice all these different behaviors, while the tech users are using, like nowadays, ChatGPT, right? So when students are using ChatGPT to write an essay, sure, they're going to get the A, but they're going to miss out on the process of research and knowing how to gather information, like Dr. Freed and myself did during our PhD years. I mean, that's how we're able to grow and study this. Yes, we didn't study tech. That's why it didn't matter that I'm just an ophthalmologist. What mattered was I was a PhD in neuroscience. You're a PhD in clinical psychology. We learned the tools and was given the toolbox to do the research. Now, if we went through our PhD years and just used ChatGPT, we would be stupid PhDs. We wouldn't know how to adapt. We would just basically, wouldn't get a job. So that's what's happening to these kids if they use tech.
Exactly. I like to look at what's happening to this generation of boys. These video game folks that you talk about, pro video game industry folks, will say, oh, your kid's learning hand-eye coordination. Kids can learn that. They'll learn it better by throwing a ball outside. Or running around and playing a sport. But look at the reality today. Going to college is actually quite helpful, or going to a trade school, but especially college really drives kids' success today. So what is happening with this generation of boys who is becoming experts, quote unquote experts, on this persuasively designed video games? They're living alone in a back room. They're not. Girls are kicking the crap out of boys academically at school. They get much higher grades all the way through school. Your grades in high school are the chief determinant of if you get to college or not. And that is pure science. Video games hurt boys' academics, or hurt academics, as the Journal of the American Medical Association Pediatrics tells us. Boys play them tons more than girls. It's basic, fundamental logic. Therefore, boys don't do as well in high school, and they're not going to go to college. That is just a basic fact. And a lot of them are going to be living at home, failing to launch. We've got to take action. It's interesting. China only allows kids to video game on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday between 8 and 9 p.m. They understand what's happening to a generation of boys. We need to start taking action. Maybe we can't do that as a government, but we need to take action as a community to help our kids.
Yeah, the Chinese, the way they prevent people from playing video games is that they use facial recognition. So a lot of the software that they have, they're probably the most advanced in facial recognition, and they will shut down the device if a child is not of age to play a game. And if they're playing too late, they use facial recognition, the cameras on the phones and computers. And because of the Communist Party over there, they just basically can do that without consent because that's what they can do as a society. I'm going to link to for our users a New York Times documentary. And in that New York Times documentary in 2008, China declared that this was the #1 problem in their society. And they actually erected more than 200 recovery centers to rescue their youth. That was in 2008. So they've known this for almost, 2 decades now. I mean, in 3 years, it'll be 2 decades that documentary was published. And so, you've dedicated your life to this. And, others have too. And I just want to mention Dr. Zimbardo to support what you're saying. So Philip Zimbardo wrote a book called Demise of Guys, as well as a TED Talk, Demise of Guys. And I just looked him up and God bless his soul. He died in 2024. He was 91. But he was so adamant about this, about all you're saying, that the girls are doing much better. If we don't get our boys off of porn and video games and media, we're going to lose them. They're going to end up in parents' basements. And I know so many that are like that. So you've dedicated your life to this. Dr. Zimbardo has dedicated his life to this, literally. I mean, he's talked about this until his death at 91. What one thing or what piece of advice do you have for parents related to what we talked about today and what's written in your book?
Put our foot down. We are being deceived by all those industry aligned and funded sources that are telling you when your kid hits preteens and teens that what they need most are their online peers. What they need most is not family, not school. What they need most is their peers. And that is a big fat lie. If we actually look at science, whether your kid is a preteen, a child, or a teen, their #1 most important emotional connection to keep them happy and healthy and not depressed and not suicidal is family. We should never, ever. Common sense media will say things like limits can actually hurt. Screen time limits can actually hurt your kid. Meanwhile, their CEO is working his bottom off to protect his own kids. It makes me sick. But let's understand that actually what our kids need, that science, like you as a parent, you understand down deep in your soul, when you see your preteens and teens leave your family behind to go disappear to a back room to be on a device, or disappear from their siblings, or not talk with their grandparents because they're going to be on a device, understand that has been as a lie, a corporate fed lie to you. Don't fall for that. It's time to keep their most important connection should be with family. The second one should be school connectedness, the institution of school, the teachers there, the community there. That will help them feel safe, happy, healthy, keep also from them being suicidal. When we actually look at the research, their peers typically don't have a positive or a negative effect. Essentially, the science will say they do not protect. Your peers cannot. Kids are not meant to be raising other kids. We're not meant to. Preteens. I have all these teens trying to raise one another online and deal with each other, and these that are cutting and suicidal. No, that's extremely toxic. Those young people deserve to be in their community, in the families that love them, and then at school without a device and feel really connected with school with a small class size rather than a bunch of smartphones. So let's understand that #1, family, and #2, school. And don't fall for this, turn your kids loose to supposedly be normal to live in a back room on a device with peers. That's a lie.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate you. And I think what you're doing is awesome. Just want to tell the viewers, I'll put the links to Dr. Freed's website as well as his books throughout this video and in the description below. And just, if you like our video, please like, share, and comment, and also hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss any of the future episodes that we have. Thank you so much.
Andy, it's been really great to be here. So thank you so much. It's an honor to talk with you.